Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping right into the kitchen together to master an absolute comfort food classic, mini fruit pizzas. We're going to follow the exact step-by-step methodology of Chef Taha Ayad, a professional chef with over 15 years of serious culinary experience. And look, this isn't just a list of instructions, it is a true masterclass in baking science, texture, and beautiful presentation. We're breaking down every single component that makes this fresh summer dessert work, from getting that perfectly soft sugar cookie base to mixing a flawlessly balanced cream cheese frosting, and finally topping the whole shebang off with fresh fruit. So grab your apron because we are getting right into the details of this beautifully festive yet entirely unfussy treat.
Now you might be wondering, why make them many? Well, we are totally skipping the traditional full-sized fruit pizza today, and for very good reason. Sure, a giant fruit pizza looks amazing when you first set it on the table, but let's be honest, slicing it cleanly is a literal messy nightmare. Plus, once it sits for a bit, the center almost always gets too soft, turning your gorgeous dessert soggy. We are skipping all of that. Mini fruit pizzas solve these structural problems entirely. Think about it, each one is its own perfect individual portion. You get a much more even bake because smaller rounds are way simpler to monitor, meaning you never end up with an underbaked center and burnt edges. Plus, they hold up brilliantly on a dessert tray for any party or summer dinner. No plates, no knives, no problem.
All right, let's dive right into Chapter 1, Essential Ingredients and Measurements.
Making a great dessert is all about structure and balance, starting right with your dough. For a cookie that's sturdy but still melt in your mouth tender, precision is everything. You're going to need exactly 1/2 cup of softened, unsalted butter and 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. To bind that all together and add flavor, grab 1 large egg and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Then, for our dry team, you'll need exactly 1½ cups of all-purpose flour for structure, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, alongside 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder for just the right amount of lift. And finally, 1/4 teaspoon of salt to perfectly balance out that sweetness. Now, Chef Taha actually warns us, do not add extra flour unless the dough is truly stick-to-your-hand sticky. A slightly soft dough is perfectly normal before it chills.
Okay, let's look at the topping and see how we build that contrast. This frosting is what keeps the whole dessert from tasting flat. You'll need 6 ounces of softened cream cheese. And here's a pro tip, add 2 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter, just to really round out the flavor. You'll sweeten that up with 1½ cups of powdered sugar and smooth it out with 1½ tablespoons of milk and a teaspoon of vanilla. For the grand finale, you need 1½ cups of diced, beautifully fresh strawberries and 1 cup of fresh blueberries. The strawberries bring the juiciness, the blueberries offer these amazing little bursts of sweetness, and the best part, both sit perfectly on top without sliding around.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, Mixing and Chilling the Dough.
When it comes to mixing, the order of operations here matters just as much as the ingredients themselves, and I need you to pay close attention to this specific number, 2. 2 minutes. You absolutely must cream the softened butter and granulated sugar together for a full 2 minutes on medium speed if you're using a stand mixer with a paddle attachment. Actually, if you're doing this by hand, it'll take a little longer. Please don't rush this. What you're looking for is a pale, soft mixture that doesn't feel gritty anymore. This absolutely crucial step guarantees a smoother dough and a significantly lighter baked texture.
So, once your butter and sugar are beautifully creamed together, you're going to beat in your egg and your vanilla. Just mix until it looks soft and even. Then, grab a separate bowl and whisk together your flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. Now, gently fold those dry ingredients into your wet bowl just until the dough comes together. And then, stop. Seriously, stop right there. Overworking the dough at this stage develops the gluten way too much, which is going to leave you with tough cookies instead of tender ones. Now for what might be the hardest step, the chill. You need to wrap your dough tightly and pop it in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour, 1 full hour. I know, it's super tempting to skip this when you just want cookies right now, but colder doughs spread significantly less in the oven. It rolls out so much more cleanly, and it gives you those really sharp bakery-style edges that make the final presentation look super professional. Trust me, it is absolutely worth the wait. All right, let's get to the fun part. Chapter 3, Baking, Frosting, and Assembly. Our dough is perfectly chilled and rested, so it is time to heat things up. Go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And while that's getting hot, grab 2 baking sheet pans and line them both with parchment paper. This is going to ensure an even bake on the bottom of the cookies and guarantees that absolutely nothing sticks to the pan.
Next, take that nicely chilled dough and roll it out on a lightly floured surface. You're aiming for an even 1/4 inch thickness here. That evenness is absolutely vital. If your edges are too thin, they'll brown way too fast, while thicker centers will lag behind and stay underbaked. Once you've got it rolled out evenly, cut the dough with a 3-inch round cutter.
Okay, space your 3-inch rounds about 2 inches apart on your parchment-lined pans. We're gonna bake these for 10 to 12 minutes. And here's the trick. Keep your eyes on the edges, not the tops. You want to pull them out the second the edges are lightly golden and the cookie feels set when you nudge it gently. The tops might still look fairly pale, and you know what? That is exactly what you want. Let them sit right there on the hot pan for 10 minutes so they finish settling, and then gently move them to a wire rack.
I cannot emphasize this next point enough. Your cookies absolutely must be completely 100% cool before you even think about adding the frosting. Seriously, if there is even a hint of warmth left in that cookie base, your beautiful cream cheese frosting is going to melt right off the sides, leaving you with a very sad, sticky mess. Patience is your best friend right now.
While those cookies are cooling off, let's whip up that frosting. You're going to beat your softened cream cheese and butter until they're entirely smooth. Then, add in your powdered sugar, your milk, and your vanilla. Give it a few solid minutes of beating so it loses any of that powdery graininess. Once your cookies are totally cool, and only then, spread that lush frosting generously over the top. Finally, arrange your fresh, dry strawberries and blueberries right on top like a little masterpiece. Let's transition over to Chapter 4, Pro Tips and Flavor Variations.
Let's talk about the finer details. Chef Taha shared some incredible pro tips with us that literally make or break the texture and shape of these pizzas. First up, do make sure you fluff, spoon, and level your flour into your measuring cup. Do not scoop it straight from the bag. That packs the flour in and leaves you with a heavy, dry cookie. Second, do use room temperature, perfectly soft cream cheese. If you try to be cold cream cheese, your frosting is going to be so lumpy. And finally, do make sure your berries are bone dry before you use them as a topping. Never use wet fruit because even a tiny bit of extra moisture will instantly thin out your frosting and make it completely runny.
Now, once you've nailed the basic technique, it is so easy to play around with the flavor profile. Try swapping in thin slices of kiwi, raspberries, or maybe blackberries for a gorgeous pop of color on your tray. You could also add a bright zing of lemon or orange zest directly into the frosting to give it a sharper edge, which is so good if your fruit is super sweet. Or, if you want a richer finish, add an elegant, really light drizzle of melted chocolate right over the top. Just remember not to overdo it. You still want that fresh fruit flavor to be the star of the show.
And finally, Chapter 5, Storage and Make-Ahead Rules.
One of the absolute best things about this recipe is how incredibly flexible it is. If you're hosting a party, this is a total game changer. And the magic number here is 3. The unbaked dough is incredibly resilient and can stay wrapped tightly in your fridge for up to 3 days before you ever need to roll and cut it. Or if you've already baked and fully assembled your mini fruit pizzas, they will also hold up beautifully in the refrigerator for up to 3 days.
But a quick caveat, just because you can assemble them 3 days in advance doesn't mean it's the optimal way to do things. While you can totally prep the individual components ahead of time, like baking the cookies and mixing the frosting, I highly recommend assembling the cookies as close to serving time as practical. Popping the fruit on right before your guests arrive ensures the frosting stays flawlessly firm and the berries look incredibly vibrant, instead of, tired and weeping.
I want to share a thought from Chef Taha Ayad that really hits the nail on the head. He perfectly captures the whole philosophy behind this recipe. He shows us how a structured, methodical approach in the kitchen, like respecting those resting times, measuring correctly, and balancing your flavors, yields an absolutely stunning dessert. It's super festive, it's beautiful to look at, but it never ever becomes overly complicated or fussy.
So, we've walked through the science of the perfect dough, the ideal balance for the frosting, and exactly how to bake these little guys to flawless perfection. Now it's your turn. I warmly invite you to take everything we've learned, step into your own kitchen, and whip up a batch yourself. Once you pull those gorgeous golden bases out of the oven and slather on that creamy frosting, what fresh fruit combination are you going to put on yours? Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and hey, happy baking!